Well, hey you guys, welcome back to Tomes of Terror, my book review series. So, if you guys remember, back in September of 2022, I talked about a book called Faces in a Window. It was the second novel by a Pennsylvania based author named Oliver C. Seneca. Now, he had actually, the writer had sent me the copy to review, and I quite enjoyed the book. I had a couple of minor issues with it, as you'll know if you saw that video, but overall, I thought it was like really good. Now, just recently, Oliver actually contacted me again and asked if I would have a look at his latest novel, which is called Shaded Grove, and that just came out like in early September of 2024, like, pretty much the same day or the day after, like when I'm putting this video up. So, free books are always a good thing. And since I liked his previous book, I obviously accepted and said I would read it and review it. Now, Oliver told me that this latest work is YA horror. But I'm going to say that even though the main characters are teenagers, in my opinion, there's really no reason that adults wouldn't dig this story as well. There was nothing in there that struck me as particularly geared toward a younger demographic, although your mileage may vary, I guess. But it didn't seem like overtly YA to me. So I'm going to say I think Oliver Seneca really knocked it out of the park on this one. The prose here is a lot leaner, a lot more assured, a lot more confident than his previous novel. And the plot is a lot more engaging, a lot more propulsive. Like, it's kind of just hits the ground running and like keeps going. Even though it largely takes place in one location, like most of it takes place in one place. The two main protagonists are both very likable, very relatable. The situation they find themselves in is like, very harrowing, and it just kind of gets worse and worse, like as the time goes on. And the descriptions of the surroundings are so vivid that you can almost like smell it, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes when you read something, like particularly if it's kind of gross, like you can kind of smell it. It was kind of like that in places. So as much as I enjoyed his previous novel, Faces in a Window, I think this one, Shaded Grove, is a huge leap forward. So the plot revolves around two sisters whose names are Megan and Diane Willis. And they're kind of similar in age, but they're pretty different. Like, their personalities are pretty different. Like, Diane is really into paranormal stuff. Like, her favorite thing to do is just go on ghost tours, go ghost hunting. And she always takes, like, her trusty EVP recorder to try and catch evidence of activity and all this other kind of stuff. Now, Megan, on the other hand, is very skeptical, and she's pretty outspoken about that. She's very sarcastic, and she really has no patience with any of this paranormal nonsense. And she's also not shy about giving Diane pretty much endless grief about her, what she considers like a very silly belief in, spirits and the afterlife and that kind of stuff. Now, in spite of Megan being really not down with the ghosty stuff, she does still love her sister very much. And at the beginning of the novel, she's actually driving Diane, like, to the next town over, I think it is, to do an extra special ghost tour, like, for Diane's birthday, because that was what she asked for her birthday. Now, on the way there, unfortunately, the weather takes a turn for the shitty, and the GPS isn't really quite cooperating. So the girls soon become lost in the middle of nowhere in essentially like a raging thunderstorm. Now, naturally, Megan is really pissed about this, basically blaming Diane for wanting to come on this stupid ghost hunting expedition in the first place, and, that ended up with them getting lost. So the two of them start arguing, and even though, like, Diane tries to maintain kind of like an even keel, Megan just keeps like picking at her and needling her and stuff like that until basically Diane kind of snaps and she starts laying into her sister about, what a cranky, like, joy killer she is. So this goes on for about a page or two. But almost immediately, some shit hits the fan in the form of this crazy looking old woman who suddenly looms in front of their speeding car. Now, Megan slams on the brakes, and at first they think they hit her, but then it ends up that they didn't, so they did actually, like, avoid hitting her. But, obviously the girls are pretty shaken up about this, as you would be. So this old lady then approaches the vehicle, and the girls kind of, like, they feel really bad, right, because they almost hit her, and so they kind of herd her inside the car to get her out of the rain, and they're just, apologizing profusely, obviously. Now, the old woman seems okay at first. Like, she also apologizes, saying, "Oh, I didn't mean to get in your way." But then there's something a little weird about the situation. Like, she seems kind of like, oddly unaffected by almost getting mowed down by a speeding car. Um, and as the moments go on, she seems like it's pretty clear that she's not really playing with a full deck, perhaps. She basically says, "Oh, I was just tidying up my room, and suddenly I was out in the middle of the street with, like, no memory of how I got here." So the sisters actually offer to take her to a hospital, but she tells them that she just wants to go back to her room. The only problem is the woman won't tell them her name or where she lives or anything like that. And a couple minutes later, she starts looking like she's having like a stroke or a seizure or something like that. So obviously the girls panic and they try to call 911, but then the old woman just flips the fuck out and she's like screaming at them that they better not call the authorities, and all she wants is like to go back to her room. So Megan and Diane are not really sure what to do about this situation. But to kind of like chill her out, they tell her, "Okay, we're absolutely going to take you back to your room. Just calm down." And, but what they're actually planning to do is drive her to the nearest hospital, which actually is about 20 miles away. So while they're driving, they don't get very far. This old woman starts saying weird, borderline threatening shit that seems to imply that she knows who they are, even though they've never seen her before in their whole entire lives. And then, only a few minutes after that, the old woman, like, completely, like, loses her shit again and starts getting grabby with the girls, like, and generally being this wildly gesticulating menace, like, inside this moving car. So the long and short of it is this woman acts up so much that Megan ends up losing control on the wet road because there's a storm, obviously, and the car ends up flipping and, crashes into a ditch. Now, Megan and Diane are both wounded, but still able to walk. Both of their phones either are lost or are broken in the crash, so they can't use them. They have no way to call for help. Now, strangely, when they free themselves from the wreckage, like the upside-down car, the old woman who caused the whole crash in the first place is nowhere to be found. However, this problem seems less pressing as the sisters start to realize, like, how much of a pickle that they're in now. So they're really not sure what else to do, so they decide to walk a bit to see if they can find, like, a house where they can call an ambulance or something like that. Now, luckily for them, or so they think at first, they almost immediately see a light, like, shining through the trees, like, a little way off, so they start walking toward it. Now, once they get there, they are kind of disappointed to see what appears to be an abandoned facility of some kind. And there's a sign on it that informs them that this was once Shady Grove Mental Hospital. Now, since the place looks like it closed like years ago, they're convinced that they won't find any help here, obviously. But then they are very surprised by the appearance of a security guard named Todd, who seems pretty friendly, and ask them to, like, come inside and use the phone, and, like, he's got some first aid stuff and they can bandage their wounds up. Now, the girls are not entirely sure if this is, like, completely kosher or not, but they don't really have much choice in the matter, right? So they go along with Todd. Now, a few things seem off once they get into the hospital, though. For one thing, everything looks like decades out of date, including the phone, which, of course, is completely dead, like it doesn't work. Not long after they all get inside, the power goes out. And then Todd goes off to restart the generator, but he never comes back. So the sisters, like, wait for him for a bit, but then they start getting creeped out, like, in this dark fucking abandoned mental hospital. And then they think they see somebody, like, skulking around outside the windows that is maybe not Todd. Now, Megan finally says, "Fuck this," and she tells Diane, "We need to get the hell out of here." They make it as far as the front gates, but because of the power outage, the gates won't open. So the girls realize they'll have to go back inside the hospital to see if they can find Todd or find some keys to unlock the gate with. Once they get back inside, though, the story is off to the races. The real nightmare begins because they start encountering all kinds of crazy shit, including people who seem to be doctors and nurses and patients, and a building that appears to be kind of shifting and deteriorating, like, in front of their eyes. So as the two of them kind of fight to get out of the mental hospital, which, that kind of comprises the bulk of the story, there are kind of occasional flashbacks to the girls' past, and in particular, they talk about, like, some previous ghost tours that they went on that end up having significance to what's happening to them inside Shady Grove. So as I mentioned, I really think this was a huge leap forward from Oliver Seneca's last novel, and it just kept me like interested and engaged like all the way through. Even though almost the entire story, like there's the beginning few pages is like the crash and everything like that, but once the girls get inside the mental hospital, pretty much the whole story is inside the mental hospital. But despite that, despite it being like one location, it never gets boring, it never gets repetitive. There's always some new horrible thing happening to them that kind of keeps you wondering what's going to happen next. You know what I mean? How much worse can it get? Also, the prose was really action focused. There was, minimal unnecessary dialogue. I think there was a little bit of ambiguity toward the end about what exactly happened, maybe like to all the ghosts, because it's like a haunted mental hospital, obviously. But overall, like this was a very, very satisfying, very fun horror story with some really creepy moments and some gross out stuff and characters you were really rooting for. Like you really wanted to see these girls like get out of there. So I would really recommend this if you're into stories about, creepy abandoned mental hospitals. Like if you like stuff like Session 9 or something like that, you would probably be really into this. Also gonna mention, not sure who designed the cover of this, but it's gorgeous and I love it. So that will do it for this Tomes of Terror. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, a share, a subscribe, all of that kind of stuff. Also a comment, that helps too. And I'll see you guys again on the next one. Bye.